Your son is still alive. Michael Lawson turned sharply at the small voice behind him. The old photograph slipped from his fingers and fell onto the grass beside the headstone. What did you just say? He asked slowly. Your son? The girl repeated. He's still alive. Michael frowned. Then he pointed at the grave beside him, his voice tightening. Are you joking? Do you not see my son's name on this headstone? Jackson Lawson, the girl said, reading it. That's my boy, Michael said. He died 14 months ago. I was in Denver closing a business deal when it happened. My sister called and told me he got very sick, very fast. By the time I flew back, everything was already over. The funeral had already happened. They told me it was better I didn't see him at the end, that he wouldn't have wanted me to remember him that way. He swallowed hard. So don't stand there and tell me my son is alive when his name is carved right here in stone. The little girl didn't look scared. She stepped closer, instead looking at the grave, then back at him. My grandpa says names on stones don't always mean the person is truly there, she said quietly. Michael frowned, studying her now. And who are you? He asked. Why are you here talking to me about my son? My name is Cora, she said. My grandpa takes care of this cemetery. I come here after school sometimes and wait for him. She looked at the grave again, then at Michael. I've seen you here before. Michael frowned. You have? She nodded. Yes, sir. You always come alone. You stand here a long time. Sometimes you talk. She hesitated, then added softly, You always talk to this grave. Michael felt something tighten in his chest. He hadn't realized anyone had ever seen him do that. Before he could answer, Cora bent down and picked something up from the grass. You dropped this, she said. She held up the photograph. Michael reached for it, but Cora looked at the picture first. She studied it carefully, her eyes moving from the man to the little boy sitting on his shoulders. This is him, she said. That's the boy who lives with us. Michael froze. Give me that, he said. She handed him the photo. Then she quickly reached into her backpack and pulled out a small envelope. My mama told me to bring this, Cora said, in case I ever saw you here again. Michael opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph, slightly bent, printed on copy paper. A small living room, mismatched furniture, a braided rug, and standing barefoot in the middle of it, a boy, maybe 9 years old now, thinner than Michael remembered, hair a little longer, holding a paper cup and looking at the camera with a cautious, careful smile. There was no mistake. It was Jackson. Michael's hands began to shake. That picture was taken in our house, Cora said. He's been living with us almost a year now. My mama found him behind the bus station on Route 9 last winter. He was real sick and real scared. He kept saying his name was Jackson and his daddy was Michael Lawson. Michael could barely breathe. That's not possible, he whispered. My son died. There were papers, a death certificate, a funeral. That funeral was a lie. Michael turned at the sound of the older voice. An elderly man was walking toward them across the wet grass, holding his work hat in both hands. He stopped beside the grave and looked from the headstone to Michael's face. Grandpa, Cora said. I told him. The old man nodded slowly. My name is Earl, he said. I've kept this cemetery for going on 32 years. Michael said nothing. He was still holding both photographs, staring at the face of the boy in the second picture. Earl continued, his voice calm but firm. I'm going to tell you something, Mr. Lawson, and I need you to listen carefully. Your son is not buried here. Michael looked up slowly. What did you say? This grave, Earl said, tapping the ground lightly with his boot, is empty. Michael stared at him. No, that's not possible. My sister and her husband arranged everything. They told me the hospital handled the body. They told me the coffin was sealed, that he was too sick at the end. They told me everything was taken care of. Earl nodded slowly. Your brother-in-law is the one who came here with the coffin, said it was a private burial, closed casket, paid cash, told me not to ask questions. He paused, then looked Michael straight in the eyes. I've buried people for over 30 years, Mr. Lawson. I know how heavy a coffin is supposed to be. He let that land. That one was too light. Michael felt the world go very quiet. I didn't say anything at the time, Earl said. But I never forgot it either. And when my daughter brought that boy home when he said your name, I started putting it all together. For a long moment, no one spoke. Michael looked at the headstone, then at the photograph in his hand, then at Cora and her grandfather. For 14 months, he had been coming to this place to talk to his son. Now he understood the truth. He had not been standing at his son's grave. He had been standing in front of a lie. Michael slowly folded the photograph and held it tightly in his hand. Then he looked at Cora, his voice low and steady but filled with something new, something that had not been there for a very long time. If my son is alive, he said, I need you to take me to him. Cora looked up at him and nodded once. Yes, sir, she said, I will. For a long moment, Michael Lawson didn't move. He looked at the girl, then at the headstone, then back at her. You don't know what you're saying, he said slowly. I know exactly what I'm saying, the girl replied. She wasn't rude about it, just certain. Michael pointed at the grave. His voice tightened. My son's name is on that stone. He was 8 years old. He died 14 months ago, while I was in Denver closing a deal. My sister called me. She said he got sick real fast, real sudden. By the time I flew back, the funeral was already done. They told me it was better I didn't see him at the end, that he wouldn't have wanted me to remember him that way. His jaw tightened. So don't stand here and tell me my son is alive when I've been coming to this grave every week for over a year. The girl looked at him quietly. She said, my grandpa always says that a name on a stone doesn't always mean a person is truly there. Michael stared at her. And who are you? My name is Cora, she said. My grandpa is the groundskeeper here. I come after school sometimes and wait for him. She paused. I've seen you before. You always come alone. You stay a long time. Sometimes you talk out loud to the grave. Something moved in Michael's chest. Embarrassment, grief, something in between. I didn't realize anyone heard that, he said quietly. Cora reached down and picked something up from the grass. Michael's photograph had slipped from his fingers without him noticing. You dropped this, she said. He reached for it. But before he handed it over, she looked at the image carefully. The man, the laughing boy on his shoulders. That's him, she said. That's the boy who lives with us. Michael took the photo from her hand. His throat felt tight. Cora, she was already reaching into her backpack. She pulled out a small envelope and held it toward him. My mama told me to bring this. She said if I ever saw you here again, to give you this. Inside the envelope was a single photograph, slightly bent, printed on regular copy paper. A small living room, mismatched furniture, a braided rug on a hardwood floor, and standing barefoot in the middle of it, a boy, maybe 9 years old now, thinner than Michael remembered, hair a little longer, holding a paper cup and looking at the camera with a cautious, careful smile. Michael's hands began to shake. That photo was taken in our living room, Cora said. He's been with us since last January. My mama found him behind the bus station on Route 9. He was real sick, running a high fever. He kept saying his name was Jackson. He kept saying his daddy's name was Michael Lawson. The photograph bent slightly in Michael's grip. That's not possible, he whispered. There was a death certificate. There was a funeral. There were papers. I signed things. Mr. Lawson. The voice came from behind him, older, steady, calm. Michael turned. An older black man was walking toward them across the wet grass. He wore work gloves tucked into the pocket of his jacket and carried his hat in both hands. His face was weathered and kind, but his eyes were serious. Grandpa, Cora said. I told him. The old man nodded. He stopped a few feet from Michael and looked at the headstone, then at the man standing before it. My name is Earl, he said. I've kept this cemetery for going on 32 years. Michael said nothing. He was still looking at the photograph. Earl continued. The day this grave was put in, it was your brother-in-law who came. Private burial, he said. Closed casket, paid in cash. Told me not to ask questions. He paused. I've buried a lot of people, Mr. Lawson. I know what a coffin is supposed to weigh. Michael looked up slowly. Earl met his eyes. That one was too light. The world went very quiet. I didn't say anything at the time, Earl said, but I never forgot it either. And when my daughter brought that boy home, when he said his daddy's name, I started putting things together. Michael stood in the cold wind and looked at the grave of his living son. For 14 months, he had been grieving at an empty box. Michael Lawson walked with Cora through the cemetery gate and out onto the sidewalk. He walked slowly, like a man whose legs were working but whose mind was somewhere 3 steps behind. Tell me everything, he said. From the beginning. Don't skip anything. Cora glanced up at him. She studied his face for a moment the way a child does when they're deciding whether an adult can be trusted with the full truth. Then she began. It was January, the kind of cold where your breath hangs in the air. My mama works the closing shift at the diner on Route 9. That night, she was coming to pick up Grandpa. I was in the car with her. She stopped at the bus station to use the ATM. Michael listened without speaking. She heard something around the side of the building, like coughing, not regular coughing, the kind that sounds like it hurts. Cora paused. She found him hiding behind a row of lockers near the back exit. He thought she was a bus station worker and tried to run, but he couldn't. He was too weak. He tried to run, Michael repeated quietly. Yes, sir, he said. Cora hesitated, then continued. He said he didn't want to go back to the place with the white walls. He said the people there told him his daddy didn't want him anymore. Michael stopped walking. A car passed on the street. A dog barked somewhere down the block. What did your mother do? He asked. She brought him home, Cora said simply. We don't have a lot, but my mama says you don't leave a child in the cold. They started walking again. He was real sick that first week, Cora went on. High fever, bad cough. Grandpa went and got medicine from the pharmacy, and Mama made soup and made him sleep in my bed. I slept on the couch. What did he say when he got better? Michael asked. He told us about you. He said his daddy worked in a big building downtown. He said you used to read to him at night, even when you came home tired. He said you had a model boat you kept on your desk, a red one, and that you used to let him touch it sometimes as a special treat. Michael closed his eyes briefly. The red wooden sailboat. He'd bought it at an antique market in Savannah when Jackson was 3 years old. Jackson had been fascinated by it from the first moment he saw it. He never said anything bad about you, Cora said. Not once. Even when he thought you hadn't come for him, he always said, she paused. He always said, my dad is probably really busy. He'll come when he's done with work. The words hit Michael somewhere below the ribs. Did he ever mention his aunt? Or her husband? Michael asked, his voice careful and even. He said a lady told him that his daddy had a new life now, that there wasn't room for a sick kid. Cora looked up at him. He said they drove him a long way and left him at a place that had locked doors and kids he didn't know. Michael's jaw tightened. That sounded like Rebecca, his sister, her soft voice, her careful way of making terrible things sound reasonable. He had trusted her completely. Why did you decide to tell me today? Michael asked. You've seen me here before. Why today? Cora was quiet for a moment. She kicked a small piece of gravel as she walked. Last week I heard him crying, she said. He thought nobody could hear him. He had his face in the pillow, but I heard. She paused. He said, I think my dad forgot about me. Michael stopped walking again. He stood on the sidewalk and said nothing for a long moment. I didn't forget him, he said, quietly. To no one in particular. I was lied to. Cora looked up at him. Then you should probably tell him that yourself. The neighborhood changed as they walked. The wider streets gave way to narrower ones. The larger homes were replaced by smaller houses, set close together porches with lawn chairs, driveways with cracked concrete, front yards where kids had left their bikes overnight. Cora pointed ahead. That one, she said. The blue one with the porch that tilts a little. Michael looked at the house. The paint was weathered. The porch did lean slightly to the left. One of the support posts had settled unevenly over the years. There was a small bicycle in the yard, a wind chime hanging still in the cold air, and a pair of boots on the top step that were clearly a child's. Those boots, Michael recognized the small worn soles. The way the left one sat, slightly turned out. His throat tightened. Before they reached the front steps, Cora stopped and turned to face him. "Mr. Lawson," she said carefully. He looked at her. "When you see him, he might not run to you right away." "Why not?" Cora spoke slowly, like she had thought about how to say this. "Because for a long time, he believed you weren't coming. And when a kid believes that long enough..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Michael nodded. "I understand. Do you?" she asked. It wasn't rude. It was a real question. "I'm going to earn it back," Michael said. "However long that takes." Cora studied him for another moment. Then she nodded once and walked up the steps. Michael followed. Inside, the house was small and warm. The smell hit him immediately, something cooking on the stove, onions and butter, and something sweet underneath it. It smelled like a house where people actually lived, where meals were made at the same time every night, and the same television shows played every evening, and someone always knew where the extra blankets were kept. A woman stepped out from the kitchen, mid-30s, a dish towel in her hands. She stopped when she saw Michael, and her expression went through several things, quickly: caution, recognition, and then a kind of exhausted relief. "Mama," Cora said, "this is Mr. Lawson, Jackson's dad." The woman was still for a moment. Then she let out a slow breath. "I've been wondering when you'd come," she said. "My name is Diane Miller." "Michael Lawson," he said. "I think you've been taking care of my son." Diane looked at him, really looked at him, the way people do when they're trying to measure someone's character in a short amount of time. "He's in the back room," she said, "doing his homework." Michael felt his heartbeat in his ears. "Before you go in there," Diane said, holding up one hand gently, "I need to tell you something." He waited. When we found him, he was underweight, sick, and he didn't trust easily. Not because anything was wrong with him, because someone had spent months convincing him that the people who should have protected him had chosen not to. She paused. "He still has hard nights sometimes. He still wakes up scared." "What did they tell him?" Michael asked quietly. "That his father had moved on. That there was a new life. That a sick kid was too much to deal with." Diane's voice was even, but her eyes were hard. He believed it. Kids believe what adults tell them, especially when no one comes to prove it wrong. Michael said nothing. "So when you walk into that room," Diane said, "don't walk in like a man who's here to fix a problem. Walk in like a father." Michael nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." Diane walked down the short hallway to a half-open door. She knocked lightly. "Jackson," she said, "there's someone here to see you." A pause. "Okay," said a small voice. Michael walked down the hallway. Each step felt longer than the last. The door was slightly open. Warm light came through the gap. He could hear the soft scratch of a pencil on paper. He stopped at the doorway. The room was small. A window with white curtains. A bed with a blue comforter. A small desk pushed against the far wall, covered in school books and papers. Sitting at the desk, head bent over his homework, was a boy. Dark blonde hair. A little longer than Michael remembered. Thinner than he should have been. A faded blue sweatshirt with a small hole near the collar. Michael didn't move. The boy looked up. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Michael saw it all at once. The shape of his face. The slight downturn of the left eye when he was concentrating. The small scar just above his right eyebrow, where a neighbor's dog had caught him when he was 4 years old. Jackson sat very still. He wasn't running. He wasn't crying. He was just looking the way a child looks at something they want desperately to believe but are afraid to. Michael didn't move closer. He remembered what Diane had said. He spoke first. "Hey, buddy." 2 words. Jackson's whole body changed when he heard them. His shoulders came up slightly. His eyes got wider. Something cracked open behind his expression. Buddy. Michael had called him that since the first day Jackson could walk. It had been their word. Jackson stood up slowly from the chair. They stood about 6 feet apart. Michael could see the questions moving across his son's face, a year's worth of questions packed into one 8-year-old's expression. So Michael did the only thing that was left to do. He told the truth. "I didn't know where you were," he said. His voice was steady, low. "I thought you were gone. I thought I'd lost you. I came to a grave and stood there and talked to you, because I didn't know what else to do." He paused. "If I had known you were here, if I had known you were alive, I would have come the very first day. Not now. Not after a year. The first day." Jackson looked at him. His voice was very small. "You didn't leave me?" The question was simple. 3 words. But it carried the weight of 14 months. Michael shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "I did not leave you. Someone lied to both of us. And I am so sorry it took me this long to find you." The room was quiet. Jackson took 1 step forward. Then another. He stopped right in front of Michael and looked up at him, studying his face like he was reading something important written there. Michael didn't rush, didn't grab him. He just stood there and let his son look at him for as long as he needed. After a moment, Jackson reached out and took hold of the sleeve of Michael's coat with one hand. Just the sleeve, holding it like he needed to confirm that this was real. Michael placed his hand gently over his son's. "I'm here now," he said quietly, "and I'm not going anywhere." In the hallway, Cora stood next to her mother. Diane put a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Cora watched Jackson hold onto his father's sleeve. "Mama," she whispered, "do you think he's going to be okay?" Diane watched Michael slowly kneel down until he was at eye level with his son. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think he's going to be okay." Somehow, Michael ended up at the kitchen table. He didn't quite remember how. One moment, he was in that small bedroom with his son. The next, there was a cup of coffee in front of him, hot, black, exactly how he took it, and Jackson was sitting across the table, eating a grilled cheese sandwich, watching Michael with careful eyes. Cora sat beside Jackson, swinging her legs under her chair, studying Michael the way she had studied him at the cemetery. Diane sat down and folded her hands. "We should talk," she said. Michael nodded. "Yes." He looked at Jackson. "Buddy, do you and Cora want to finish eating in the living room? I need to talk to Miss Diane for a few minutes." Jackson glanced at Cora. Then he looked back at Michael like he was making sure the man wasn't going to vanish while he was gone. "You'll still be here?" Jackson asked. "Yes," Michael said. "I'll be right here." Jackson picked up his plate with both hands carefully, the way Michael had taught him when he was little, and carried it to the living room. Cora followed. When they were alone, Michael looked at Diane. "Tell me what you know," he said. Diane took a slow breath. "When I found him that night, he was behind the bus station on Route 9, hiding between a row of lockers and the back wall, running a fever over 103. He was in pajamas like someone had taken him out of bed and just driven him away, left him there." Michael's hands tightened around the coffee cup. "He didn't fight me. He was too weak. But he kept asking if I was going to take him back to the white place. That's what he called it, the white place. Locked doors. Other kids who didn't talk much. Adults in scrubs who gave him pills and told him he was sick." "A facility," Michael said quietly. "That's what it sounds like." "Did he say where it was?" "He said it was far from home. A long drive. He didn't know the name of the town." Diane paused. "He ran away. He'd been planning it for a while, apparently. He waited until a door was left open during a shift change. He walked for what sounds like several miles before he found the bus station." Michael set the coffee cup down. "A 9-year-old boy. Sick. In pajamas. Walking miles alone in January because someone had told him his own father didn't want him. Did he say who put him there?" Diane looked at him carefully. "He said a woman brought him. He said she was nice to him at first. That she said they were going somewhere fun." A pause. "He said she smelled like lavender." He remembered that. Rebecca, his sister. She had worn the same lavender perfume for 15 years. "He never blamed you," Diane said. "I want you to know that. He was convinced for a while that you didn't come for him because you were too busy. But he never said you were bad. He never said he hated you." Michael looked down at the table. "The last few months," Diane continued, her voice gentler now, "he started to struggle more. He started asking questions I didn't have answers to. Why you hadn't looked for him. Whether you'd gotten a new family. I was grieving," Michael said. "I thought he was dead." "I know," Diane said. "And now you both need to grieve what was taken from you." From the living room came the sound of the television and the low murmur of Cora explaining something to Jackson. And then, underneath that, the sound of a small laugh. Michael looked up. Diane was watching him. "He still laughs," she said quietly. "He's a resilient kid. Whatever they put him through, they didn't break him." Michael nodded once. He didn't trust his voice right then. After a moment, he said, "I don't know how to thank you." Diane shook her head. "You can thank me by not letting this define him, by making sure he knows the truth about why you didn't come, by giving him back his normal." "I will," Michael said. "I promise." Michael Lawson did not leave the blue house on Sycamore Street that evening until well after dark. He stayed for dinner, a simple meal, pasta with garlic bread, eaten at a table where everyone had a designated seat, and Cora's job was to pour the drinks, and Jackson's job was to set the napkins. Jackson gave Michael the seat next to his. They didn't talk about everything that night. There was too much of it, and too much of it needed the right moment. Some things you couldn't explain to a child all at once: the lies, the grave, the year of grief, the people who had built a wall between a father and his son. But Michael talked to him about other things. He talked about the red sailboat on his desk, which was still there. He told Jackson exactly where it had always been. He talked about the park near their old apartment, about whether they should get a dog, about what Jackson was learning in school. And Jackson, carefully, slowly, the way a kid rebuilds trust with someone who has been missing from their life, began to answer. By the time dessert came, he was telling Michael about Cora teaching him a card game. By the time the dishes were cleared, he had moved his chair 3 inches closer without realizing it. When Michael finally stood to go, Jackson walked him to the door. "You'll come back?" he asked. "Tomorrow," Michael said. "And every day after that." Jackson considered this. Then he nodded, like they had just made an agreement. "Okay," he said. Michael walked to his car in the dark. He sat in the driver's seat for a long time without starting the engine. He thought about Rebecca, about her husband, about the empty coffin in the cemetery and the facility somewhere out on a long road, and a little boy in pajamas walking through January cold, because he had believed, because he had been told that no one was coming for him. There would be consequences for all of it. Michael would make sure of that. But that was for the lawyers and the authorities and the long, cold machinery of accountability to sort out. Tonight was for something else. Tonight, Michael Lawson had found his son. He thought about what Earl, the groundskeeper, had said, standing by that stone in the cemetery wind. "I've buried people for over 30 years. I know what a coffin is supposed to weigh." One careful old man who noticed something wrong and held on to that truth for 14 months until the right moment. Until a little girl in a green jacket with muddy knees decided that the man who talked to an empty grave every Tuesday deserved to know. Michael finally started the car. He drove back toward the cemetery. Not because he wanted to stand at the grave, but because it was on the way home, and he needed to drive past it. To look at it from the car window and understand, really understand, that what was buried there was not his son. What was buried there was the lie. And his son was alive. Alive and eating pasta and learning card games and sleeping in a borrowed bed in a small blue house on Sycamore Street, under a patchwork quilt that someone else's mother had made until his own father could bring him home. Which he would. Tomorrow. 3 weeks later, Jackson Lawson moved back into his father's apartment. The red sailboat was on the desk. His old books were still on the shelf. His bedroom was exactly as he'd left it. Michael hadn't changed a single thing. Not even the drawing taped above the headboard, the one Jackson had made when he was 6 years old of 2 stick figures, one tall and one small, standing in front of a house. The tall one said Dad in wobbly letters. The small one said me. Jackson stood in the doorway of his bedroom and looked at it for a long time. Then he walked in, sat on his bed, and looked around the room like he was remembering it. Michael stood in the hallway and waited. After a moment, Jackson said, "It's the same. I didn't change anything," Michael said. Jackson nodded slowly. Good. They had dinner that night, just the two of them, and Jackson fell asleep on the couch halfway through the movie they were watching, his head on a pillow and his feet tucked under a blanket that Michael had draped over him. Michael sat in the armchair across the room. He didn't sleep. He just watched his son breathe. For 14 months, he had driven to a cemetery and stood at an empty grave and talked to someone who wasn't there. Now he sat in his own living room, in the quiet dark, and listened to the small, steady sound of his son asleep. And he understood something that no amount of grief, counseling, or time or distance had ever managed to teach him. The worst thing in the world is not loss. The worst thing is being kept from someone who is still there. And the best thing, the very best thing, is finding out, against all evidence and all the lies that were carefully built to make you stop looking, that the person you thought was gone was never truly gone at all. He was just waiting for his father to come through the door. Cora visited on Saturdays. She and Jackson played cards at the kitchen table and argued about the rules. Michael made grilled cheese sandwiches, the good kind, with 2 kinds of cheese and butter on both sides of the bread, and Cora ate 2 of them without slowing down. "You make it the same way Mama does," she told Michael one afternoon. "Then your mama and I have good taste," he said. Cora considered this seriously. "Yeah," she decided. "You probably do." Jackson looked at Michael from across the table. He was smiling. Not the careful, watchful smile from the photograph, the one Diane had taken in her living room. The one that said, "I'm trying to trust you, but I'm not sure yet." This was the other smile. The one Michael knew. The one from the photograph he had carried to the cemetery every Tuesday for 14 months. The laugh with the whole body. The arms out, the head thrown back. That smile, it came back slowly. The way warmth comes back to a hand that has been out in the cold. But it came back. Earl was right. A name on a stone doesn't always mean the person is truly there. And sometimes the truth, no matter how carefully it's been buried, no matter how many lies are stacked on top of it, no matter how many sealed coffins and signed papers and soft, convincing voices insist that you should stop looking, sometimes the truth finds its way home. If this story moved you, please like this video and tell us in the comments where are you watching from. And if you believe in justice, in love, and in the kind of truth that refuses to stay buried, subscribe to this channel. The next story is waiting for you.